He used to skip prayers like it was nothing, just another thing to fit around his busy schedule. But one day, something changed. He realized he wasn't just skipping prayers. He was skipping something far more important. Here's how he learned not to skip prayer and got addicted to it. Meet Ayan, a young man juggling university, part-time work, and the pressures of life. He had always considered himself a good Muslim, but prayer, that was something he'd sometimes fit in, sometimes skip. Like many, his connection with Salah wasn't strong, and it often felt like just another task on his never-ending to-do list. Ayan had always been a believer. He grew up in a family that taught him the importance of prayer, and deep down, he knew it was essential to his faith. But life, with all its distractions, slowly took over. His days were consumed with university assignments, work, and an ever-growing list of things to do. When the time for prayer came, he found himself thinking of everything else: his phone, the next task on his to-do list, his social media notifications. "I'll pray later" became a mantra he told himself repeatedly. And so, the prayers he once performed with sincerity and devotion became nothing more than a checkbox on a list. Slowly, Ayan drifted away from the one thing that could bring him real peace. He wasn't a bad person, but his heart began to feel distant from Allah, and the emptiness started creeping in. One evening, as Ayan sat in his room feeling overwhelmed by the weight of his responsibilities, he did what he always did when seeking a temporary distraction. He opened his phone. As he scrolled through his feed, a post from a page he followed caught his eye. It was a simple reminder: the first thing you'll be asked about on the Day of Judgment is your prayer. The words froze him. Ayan had heard this before, but in that moment they hit differently. It was as if his soul had been awakened from a deep slumber. He had been skipping prayers for weeks, convincing himself that he would make it up later, but now he saw the truth. There was no later, not when it came to something as important as his relationship with Allah. Ayan felt a rush of guilt wash over him. He couldn't ignore it any longer. For the first time in months, he truly wanted to pray. But could he fix the damage he'd done? The next day, Ayan tried to shake off the guilt. He had an important social gathering to attend with his friends, a casual hangout to blow off some steam. As the evening progressed, laughter filled the room, but Ayan felt a sense of detachment. His mind kept wandering to the prayer he had skipped earlier that day. His friends, though good people, didn't seem to care about the importance of prayer. One of them joked about how they could make up for missing prayers later in the week. Ayan forced a smile, but the words stung. He felt like an outsider in his own life. The noise around him seemed louder, but inside, there was only silence, an overwhelming emptiness that could only be filled by prayer. While studying, the distractions continued. Ayan sat at his desk, buried in paperwork, when the call for prayer echoed from the mosque nearby. Normally, he would have shrugged it off and continued working. But today was different. As he stared at the clock, he realized how much he had been avoiding Allah's call. Every time the prayer came, it felt like a subtle push, like a hand reaching out to him. But Ayan had been too busy with his life, too distracted by deadlines and ambitions to truly answer that call. He sighed deeply, unsure of how to bridge the distance he had created between himself and Allah. Could he even return to the prayer, or was he too far gone? That night, Ayan sat at the dinner table with his family. His younger brother, who always seemed to have a strong connection with his prayers, looked at him thoughtfully. "Ayan, you haven't been going to the mosque lately," he said. "Everything okay?" The question was innocent, but it hit Ayan hard. He hadn't realized how much his absence had been noticed. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He wanted to explain, to tell them that he had been distracted by life, but the truth was too difficult to say aloud. His brother smiled, offering a piece of advice. "Sometimes we get lost in the world, but Allah's always waiting for us to come back." Ayan nodded silently, realizing that his brother's words were the guidance he needed. Later that night, Ayan stood in his room, staring at the prayer mat. His thoughts raced. He had spent so much time seeking fulfillment from work, social events, and fleeting moments of happiness. But now, he realized those things didn't bring him peace. He had been chasing a mirage. His heart longed for the connection that prayer provided, the comfort of bowing down before Allah and finding solace in His presence. Ayan kneeled and placed his forehead to the mat, whispering quietly, "Ya Allah, forgive me. I need you." In that moment, tears flowed freely, tears of guilt, but also tears of hope. He was finally acknowledging his wrongs and opening his heart to return to the one who had always been there. The following morning, Ayan woke up for far prayer. For the first time in a long while, his heart was full of sincerity. He hadn't just performed prayer because it was a ritual. He had prayed with the awareness of what it truly meant. As he stood in the dark room, the stillness enveloped him, and he felt a connection to Allah that he had missed for so long. Ayan reflected on the words of the Prophet Muhammad, "Peace and blessings be upon him. The coolness of my eyes is in prayer." For the first time, Ayan understood that feeling. How prayer wasn't a burden but a refuge, a way to realign himself with his purpose. When he finished his prayer, he sat in sujud, making sincere dua for strength and guidance. The peace he felt in that moment was overwhelming. The void in his heart began to fill, and for the first time in a while, he felt whole again. Ayan realized that prayer wasn't just an obligation. It was a source of nourishment for his soul. Ayan's journey to rediscover the value of prayer wasn't easy, but it was one that brought him peace and clarity. He had learned the hard way that no matter how busy life became, no matter how many distractions pulled at him, prayer was the anchor that kept him grounded. Each prayer became a reminder of his purpose, a way to reconnect with Allah, and a chance to reset his soul. Slowly, he began to prioritize his prayers, making them the cornerstone of his day. His relationship with Allah deepened, and the distractions of the world faded. Ayan found peace in knowing that no matter how far he had strayed, the door to Allah's mercy was always open. And with that realization, he found his way back, stronger and more committed than ever. If Ayan's story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share this video with a friend who may need to hear it, and join us on this journey of spiritual growth. Remember, Allah is always waiting for you to return. Stay connected through prayer. It's never too late.